radio network. We're trying to, and we're not probably going to be able to get them all, full disclosure, but we will try. All of the people that file for candidacy here in Fargo to end up on the city commission or, to be mayor of the city of Fargo, we're definitely bringing them into the studio so that you can get to know them. You can hear from them. You can find out what's driving them, what made them put their name on the ballot. And said, you know what, I can do this job, and I want to do this job. Well, the individual we have in studio right now is Victoria Johnson. And Victoria, well, it's best described by her. I've got some things in my notes here that I think do a great job of explaining her advocacy, but let's get to her. Victoria, good to have you on News and Views.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so grateful to be here. My name is Victoria Johnson. I am a family advocate and a founder of a nonprofit organization called Families United for Self-Empowerment. We work with families and children, mainly with focus with families with low income and new Americans, and also families with children with disability.
Okay. So that sounds more like a calling than a job. I mean, you must have a lot of passion to help people to do that.
Yeah, I have a great passion. I grew up, my grandma always taught me, always do what brings you joy. And I find a passion in helping people and helping those who just need somebody to lift them up and give them that little way and be able to be independent and do it for themselves. And so I find great passion in doing that.
Do you think that we here in the upper Midwest and the people in Fargo really understand the size of the community that you're serving and what life is like for those members of the community?
I think a lot of people don't know. I don't think people pay attention sometimes. They just probably think, we're great. Our city is great. But I don't think people know that there are people that are really struggling and just need somebody to guide them and somebody to provide that support services for them and somebody just to be there. Even just going in to a doctor's appointment to hear that your kid might have something, you want somebody there, just somebody there to hold your hand, somebody there to be that second ear to help you. So when you do go home, that they can fill you in and be like, here's some of the things. And we're here for you. You're not going to be alone. And so I don't think a lot of people know that.
How do you make that work, work well, I will ask that in a better way. How do you pay the bills? I mean, how do you make sure that there's enough money to do what you're doing?
Well, everybody who is an advocate can tell you don't get paid as an advocate. I don't get paid. Our organization provide all these services for free. We do not get paid. I have a paying job. So I do work and I also do my advocacy work. I am so grateful for the company I work for where I have I can do my own self-schedule. So I can incorporate my working schedule to pay bill and keep roof on top of my kids. And I can also do what I love. What's my passion is to help and serve those who need our help.
That is just so amazing. The time that you're putting in beyond the job then that pays your bills is to advocate. In terms of those people that you look at, you say, man, they need some help. They need some attention. How do you determine that? Do they reach out to you? Do you reach out to them? I mean, how do you go about finding the individuals that require the services you're talking about?
It's a lot of our clients that come to us is word of mouth. Okay. We host different events. We host events and we bring in different people and parents come in. And then when they hear, or when you serve one parent, they go out there and they tell somebody and say, oh, you know what? I was having a problem and these people really helped me and they were there for me. And then what's so great is that those parents will help. They also go out there and try to help other people. And that's the goal. The goal is to mentor them, to provide them that support services and help them navigate the system. And then they can go there and take those tools and also help somebody. And so that is one of the biggest benefit for what I do every day.
Well, one of the biggest needs that the city of Fargo has is a more robust workforce.
Yes.
I mean, the workers aren't there to fill the positions that businesses in Fargo have. Are we really describing the same thing here, just in different ways?
Yeah, pretty much we're describing the same thing. And if you look at, there was a data I was looking at pediatric, they released a data that's saying, I believe it was 7 or 20% families with children with developmental disability are likely to leave their job and focus 100% in caring for their children.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that I was one of those people. I had to go from a full-time to part-time because I'm a parent with a child with disability. And so I know that challenge. I have walked in those people's shoes, so I understand that need to have somebody there and somebody sometimes to talk to, right?
Yeah.
And that's the lonely world that people sometimes don't understand.
So as a Fargo City Commissioner, what do you do to raise that, to utilize the skills you've developed to change people's lives through that?
Bringing what our needs are in our community. One of the biggest need is also housing, affordable housing for those who really need to be able to afford where they're living with their kids and never have to worry. Sometimes you have to choose, do I go on welfare and care for my kid, or do I work part-time and be able to afford where I'm living? So we need to make sure that we have affordable housing so they can have to be able to work and be able to afford where they're living and be able to provide for their family. So if I am elected, that's one of the things I'm really going to look at as special assessment. I think we have people who are homeowners that I believe special assessment is creating a burden on some parents and some families in our community. We need to look at that and what is in place. Is it working? Is it not working? That's something, a skill as an advocate. You also come in and you think, okay, how do I work with somebody and how do we come collaboratively and do what's best for those we serve? I always put those we serve first, not politics.
Okay.
I never look at politics as like, I need to go out there and start campaigning because I want to win. But I also want to make sure that those we serve get that help before I put politics ahead of them.
Pretty remarkable. Victoria, you also are in favor of term limits, which tells me something about you in the sense that you don't look at these jobs as though they should be lifetime appointments, that these are jobs that you go in, you do what you're going to do, and you go home.
Yes. Yes.
Explain to me why.
I am an outside the box thinker. I believe everybody have great ideas, and I believe there's so many people in our community that want to serve their community and want to serve, but those people are likely not to have that opportunity when we have the same people and voters are voting based on their names, and those people have their set way, and this is how we need to do things. That's why I believe we need to bring new perspective, new ideas, people who are outside the box thinker, and people who are not afraid to challenge, who are not afraid to ask, why not this way? And I am that kind of person. Why? Have we tried this, right? So I believe term limits is really good to bring in people with different perspective, people who can actually come in and work and be able to create the growth we need to see in Fargo.
Interesting. All right. So running out of time here, but I just want to make sure that people, as they've just gotten to know you, really know what or if they could do things with your campaign. I mean, what are we talking door to door? Are we talking about, hey, you can reach out to me here? What are you talking about, Victoria?
Yeah, door to door, going in, knocking doors and going out there and just talk of not just my campaign, but what I do in the community. I am very proud of the work I have done. I serve on North Dakota Department of Public Infrastructure. Kristen Baszler appointed me to serve on that. And I also served on the juvenile, actually, that's how I met your sister, Melanie.
Oh, okay.
I served on the North Dakota Juvenile Justice Racial Disparity.
You want to know some bad things about Mel? I can
No,
tell you.
no,
Okay.
I am not going
Just
to.
letting you know.
I am not going to
Okay.
because, I have a great respect for her. And even if you do tell me, I'm not going to believe
She cheats
you.
at cards. I'll just put that one down. I truly believe she does.
No, I'm not going to believe what you say. I am a person, one thing about me is you can tell me something about somebody. Until I meet that person and get to know them, I want to make my own judgment of that person. So I'm not a person, you can tell me anything and everything about somebody.
It's a good quality. It's a
So,
really good quality.
because people can say anything, right? Until
Sure.
you give that person that chance, you get to know them and you get to talk to them, you get to know who they are. You know what I mean? We're quick to judge. One thing my grandma taught me is see a person as a human first and then see their character and their skin, right? My grandma was a big inspiration, and I dearly love her with her blonde hair and long nails, and never change her nail color. It's always red, and I love her for that, And she just, always taught me, don't, believe everything you see, and always, see people behind their skin and get to know who they are.
Well, how do people find out more about you other than listening to this and, of course, listening on the podcast on kfjo.com later on? How do they find out more about you? Do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook page?
Yes, I do. They can go to Victoria Johnson for Fargo City Commission, and I'm on Facebook. I have my phone number, email address. They can call me, email me directly, and we can sit down and talk, and I am open to answer any and all questions. I have done great work in this community, and not a lot of people know. I was actually part of congressional briefing, Washington, D.C., advocating not only for a great state, but also for our city. And so I am honored to be part of that, and I look forward to go back again and advocate to make sure that our schools, our school teachers and students and family in our state is getting the full funded for our school. IDA is not always full funded. So I am very, very proud of the work I have done. I am not publicly with what I do. I'm kind of the person that just go by and do what needs to be done.
Right.
I don't need recognition. All I care about is that work is getting done.
Yep. Well, you got their attention, so that's good. I hope we helped with that. Victoria, always good to see you. I hope we get a chance to visit more.
I hope so.
Okay. Victoria Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, what's your thoughts on these commission? should be interesting. It's at the sanctuary, and we're charging what, $622 to get in?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, or nothing. You can just pop on in and take part in it. Now, the Twins Mania. This has got you and Amy and JJ written all over it. What the heck is this all about?
Twins Mania. Yeah, so listen on Thursday. Each show, the Morning Crew News and Views, It Takes Two, Afternoons Live, will be qualifying one person in each show to win 4 tickets to opening day at Target Field.
Oh.
So we won't be giving away the tickets, but hopefully our News and Views listener on Thursday will win. And then they'll find out in the drive time news at 5 o'clock.
So
on Thursday,
let's just be honest. We want our listener on News and Views.
We want our listener to win.
Is there any way we can rig that?
We could try.
I want our guy to win.
I mean, our listener will have a 1 out of 4 chance to win. And then also we're encouraging.
1 out of 4?
Yeah.
It should
between
be
all
more.
the shows. But then also that same person or anyone else between now and Thursday should go to the Say It Ain't Snow page on kfgo.com and try to win that snow roof raiser.
That roof raiser is the what's the word? I want to be nice now. And not
you have to
swear
guess
on
how
air.
much snow we'll have by Thursday.
There you go. Stick around. More coming your way. We're going to talk about a pipeline hauling carbon right after this. we haven't brought up on News and Views lately, that we've ignored, that we haven't, addressed. We definitely can get to that. Yesterday, had a chance to visit with Trent Luce. Obviously, he and I aren't going camping together. We're not besties, but the truth of the matter is he said some things on air that I disagreed with and some things that I think were false. And so we're going to get to those today as well. But there's a controversy going on in regards to a number of things when it comes to regional oil and gas campaign, when it comes to Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline. There's just some things going on that involve farmers. You've got a soy crushing plant. You've got a wet corn mill plant. You've got all of these things that you could say, well, that's what comes with progress. Or you could say, are we doing it right? I think that should be said no matter what. One of the resources that people have relied on in many cases to just be a check and balance, to just be a voice of, hey, have you considered? And I know I've relied on them many times in the past, has been the Dakota Resource Council. Well, Scott Skokos is the leader of that. He is the executive director. And one of the reasons that we asked Scott to come on is because of Summit Carbon pipeline that's going to be going. Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline that's going to be hauling carbon to western North Dakota through eastern North Dakota and some other areas, and injecting it in so it can be injected into North Dakota soil. Scott, good to have you on News and Views.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
What is the Dakota Resource Council's position on this?
So our position on this is somewhat nuanced, but at this point we're leaning towards opposition entirely. But at this point we're siding with the landowners, and we have several concerns about the long-term viability of this technology. Just to kind of give your listeners a background, we're opposed to carbon capture in most situations around coal-fired power plants, and this is similar to that in the sense that it's an unproven technology. So with the environmental concerns around this, we're definitely leaning towards a oppositional stance on this. But at this point, we're still kind of sitting on the fence as far as where that is. But I'm going to say like 90% chance we're going to be opposing this in the coming weeks.
So the obvious question is, why are you against capturing carbon?
So as far as this all stands, is we look at it as kind of a false solution, over engineering a solution that could, in a lot of ways, there's other solutions that are out there that are much easier as far as what the transition that could be happening. For example, other major utility states with utility companies aren't doing this kind of a transition. They're doing renewables, batteries, and then some natural gas-fired power plants in order to provide the base load. As far as the Summit project, that's more about the transportation sector, right? So ethanol, gasoline, things like that. And what we're even doing in North Dakota, and I don't think this is going to be a wholesale thing as far as the ag community, but as far as transportation, we're putting in all these EV charging places all over the state. And there's a possibility that this technology may or may not be needed in the future if we do transition off liquid fuels. As many of the oil or the auto industry people are saying. I don't think that's going to be the case for agriculture, nor would I advocate for that at the moment with our agricultural members at DRC. So
when you look at this, there's so many different people lining up against it, Scott, with so many different interests. One of yours is futuristic in terms of, do we need to do this? Do we have the science behind doing it? Those type of things. The farmers that I talked to, Scott, you said, you're sticking up for the farmers, or looking at 90% there. The farmers I talked to are just mad. I mean, they're mad.
Yeah.
They think this is being rammed down their throat. They think the state of North Dakota is against them. They're looking how to take on Summit. I mean, they're mad, Scott. And I don't know what the Dakota Resource Council, if you're hearing that same thing or not.
Yes, I mean, that's what we had a meeting in Oaks about 2.5-3 weeks ago with about 60 plus landowners. And actually prior to the meeting, someone thought that I was somebody from Summit, and they started doing the pressing me in the chest kind of thing, that you're coming to my town to put the pipeline in. And I had to say, no. We're here to kind of educate you guys and bring you some resources so that if you do want to oppose this, you have the ability. So that I've been hearing the same thing, Joel, is there's people who are scared about their land, whether or not they would be liable for any damages that happen with this pipeline if they accidentally ruptured it with their farm equipment. And the other sentiment is because this has been boosted by our governor and the Burgum administration, I'll just be honest, they are very concerned that they're just being railroaded here and that they're not going to have any options to stop this thing without lawyering up. That's why we're bringing them a lawyer at this point.
That's what I got, Scott. That's exactly what I got. I got farmers who looked at us and said, look, we're going to have to throw in, and there's actually some people organizing to have them throw some money in the hat so they can collectively hire a lawyer to take on Summit. And I said, why are you taking on Summit? I don't get why you're doing that when, in fact, the folks that you should be taking on or challenging are the ones that you pay, meaning the governor and the Department of Commerce and others that have been working behind the scenes and doing all of this without talking to the farmers. And so I don't, Scott, there's no way if I was a farmer or rancher and I was against this crossing my land or against how they're treating me versus how they treated farmers in Iowa, for example, there is no way that I would sit there and put money into a lawsuit against them when, in fact, I would expect my state to do that for me. And I don't know if you see a huge conflict of interest here as this goes forward, but it's one of the questions I have for you, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, as far as our government's role in this is they are tacitly supporting, for example, a lot of the research that was done for the injection zone, which is in North Dakota coal country, was done by the EERC at University of North Dakota. I'm not trying to say that EERC is a bad institution. They're going after contracts, and that's what they do, right, Joel? I mean, they're literally out there to do some research. But a lot of the research that was done around our injection zone was done at EERC. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the research done around carbon capture has been done at ERC for the coal plants as well. And a lot of that money has been funneled from our congressional delegation, so our senators and our representatives from the Department of Energy. And our governor's office also in our legislature created the Clean Sustainable Energy Authority in order to fund some of the research for these projects as well. And recently I think it was like a $3.2 million investment was made into studying one of the test injection wells up in central North Dakota in the coal fields.
So let me ask you this: is the science sound? Because it at some point you get the sense that we're taking a product no others want, and we're injecting it into our ground, and it's going to be at a place where we have that with us for a long time unless we find a very good use for it. Now, I don't know whether the science is good or strong or, hey, we can do this and it's not going to do anything to long, term future in terms of North Dakota, but I don't know what it is. This is very unscientific, what I'm saying, Scott, but it just feels like we're almost becoming a landfill here. And it throws up a red flag for me.
Yeah, I mean, the landfill trope is definitely something that we've been looking at. It's similar to what was happening. You probably know this, Joe, more than I was probably not around at this point. But in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, when there was a lot of hazardous waste facilities, I believe, when you were in the legislature coming to different states in the West, including North Dakota. And I look at that, this is similar to that. But as far as the science, Joel, like the best way to put it is, it depends on which experts you ask. If you ask EERC, they'll say this is a flawless technology that will happen, that will not have a lot of problems, and we've got this covered. And that's what the governor's hearing, and he believes it. And and in some ways, I don't fault him for that. But if you talk to other experts, they'll say that we have no idea of predicting whether or not this could be long-term stored. In fact, there's tax credits at the federal government. That's the main economic driver for this thing. This whole project is the 45Q tax credits, and they only estimate that you have to keep the carbon stored for approximately 50 years. And after that point, it's kind of left up to in my opinion, if we don't know if this is going to stay there for 50 or for more than 50 years, then we potentially have a cleanup issue coming in 50 years, where if our whole goal is to store carbon to mitigate climate change or whatever you want to say about emissions, and then this stuff starts leaking. Was it really a solution, or was it just a temporary solution that ended up not working?
Yeah.
And then we're left to clean it up, like you just said, like the waste up analogy. So,
Scott, I'm sure we're going to have more of these conversations. I really appreciate it. What you do isn't glamorous. A lot of times you're out there on the front line telling people what they may not want to hear. And so the Dakota Resource Council has been, to me, a fabulous organization for a long time. I haven't always agreed, and you haven't always agreed with me. I just know how badly you're needed. So thank you, Scott. Thanks for coming on.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Joel. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Scott Skokos, ladies and gentlemen, the executive director at the Dakota Resource Council. Let's get to the weather cave and find Mr. Too Tall Tom Shemansky. I'm going to revert back to my days in the North Dakota legislature. You heard Scott Skoas talk about, the days when they wanted to take all the trash from Minneapolis, and we called it a trash train. I worked in those days with some absolutely great people out at Gwinner, North Dakota, and they were trying to take an area in Gwinner that is a landfill that serves a specific need, and they were trying to just bring trash trains out of the cities and use North Dakota as its dumping site. And there were those of us that organized and fought against it. And actually, the EERC out of Grand Forks was a big help in turning all of that back. And we got gyms full of people because the communities out there, number one, didn't want to have that be the image of their communities, but mostly because people didn't want North Dakota to become the dumping site of the upper Midwest. And I just want to call out a name, too. Vern Stallman was a huge help to those individuals. He had done his homework, he had done his due diligence, and he was one of the key people that helped me and others. And it actually led to my time in the legislature because I was going out to a very conservative area where they actually, they appreciated a lot that I was looking out for groundwater and that I was trying to help them and advocate on behalf of them. So who's advocating on behalf of the individuals that, are going to get their land crossed here when it comes to Summit Carbon Solutions? Who is their ace in the hole? Who are the individuals? Here's what I'm struggling with of how North Dakota is doing this, whether it's the wet corn mill plant and that the Chinese are going to own up by, Grand Forks, or whether or not it's the soy crushing plant that the Japanese are going to own by Castleton, or whether it's this Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline. Everybody's going, Joel, don't lose sight. You've got a market for soybeans. You got a market for corn that we didn't have before. And also you've got a way to potentially deal with carbon and make a buck or two on it. I understand those things. I understand those concerns. What I don't understand is this. If North Dakota's Department of Commerce, if its Department of Commerce is going to run around saying, look at all the jobs we created, and that's going to be their basis, then I want to know what they're doing to fill those jobs. Because I have a lot of people in my life that can't find the people to do the jobs that they have now. So let's not say that we're willing to sell our soul in any way, shape, or form to create jobs when we don't have people to fill the jobs. And I think that that's very, very important to talk about. I do. I think it's very important to have that conversation. When you take a look at the communication that is going on between North Dakota's Department of Commerce and going on between the people of North Dakota, I think there's a real gap there. I think there's a very big gap there. I think that what you're seeing is you're seeing a situation where nobody's communicating with these home areas. James Lamont is the head of North Dakota's Department of Commerce. James Lamont is in that position because of Doug Burgum. These farmers that are going to start throwing money in the hat to collectively get a lawyer so that they're treated the way they should on their land, you shouldn't have to do that. Drew Wrigley is your lawyer. Drew Wrigley is your lawyer. He's the Attorney General of the state of North Dakota. Doug Burgum is to be your advocate. You pay those two individuals' salaries. If James Lamont is setting up projects like this without talking to you, without making sure the neighborhood knows, fire him. Get rid of him if that be the case. But you deserve to have your state looking out for you rather than you opening up your checkbook so that you have to protect the land that's going to get crossed. I want to know what you think about that, if you agree with what I just said. 1-800-880-5346. Messages here about how, yes, the governor and the attorney general, the governor, okay, it isn't a cheap shot. It isn't a cheap shot if you say it and then you don't live up to it. The governor said he was going to end the Good Old Boys Club. Well, he didn't, right? Wayne Stenhjem dies. Drew Wrigley ends up being the attorney general of the state of North Dakota. Drew Wrigley is part of the Good Old Boys. He's part of that inner circle of people that just simply want to hold office in government and aren't looking at the service that you provide when you're in government. This deal, I'm not saying that Summit Carbon Solutions putting a pipeline to store carbon in North Dakota soil is a bad thing. I'm saying that we don't know it's a good thing. I'm saying that the people of North Dakota don't know it's a good thing. I'm saying that our land here in the Northland isn't worth anything less than the people of Iowa have in their land in terms of using an easement. Now, you can say, well, yeah, land doesn't sell up here for what land sells in Iowa. I don't care. I don't care about that. What I care about is you're putting X number of feet across X number of land, and the people up here who farm and ranch, that's their land. I also am going to be keeping a very close eye on whether or not any form of eminent domain is used so that they lose any right of negotiation when it comes to this. Doug Burgum came on this show and he didn't like being asked. You know how you can tell some things, right? I asked him whether or not he was going to allow eminent domain to be used for building Summit Carbon Solutions. He didn't like the question. And you can tell he did the John Hoven on the question. He didn't answer it. He just kind of went around it. And, well, Joel, we've got a great, it's like, no, it's a pretty simple question. It's a yes or no. Will you, through the governor's office, allow eminent domain to be used as a tool to put a pipeline across the farmer's land? That's a yes or no. In the end, after asking, I think it was 3 times, the answer came back that he would not allow that. Well, I thought that was a good answer. Doug, if you're listening, I thought that was a good answer. Now you've given those farmers and ranchers the ability to sit down at a negotiating table and work out how that pipeline might be crossing their land. But here's where I'm really struggling. I'm really struggling with the fact that we find out about all these things because, oh, God, you can't say anything. Don't say anything. It's got to be, we might lose this. If the Chinese are building a wet mill corn plant on the edge of Grand Forks in an area where the residents and the people that live there don't know a doggone thing about it, then the people of North Dakota who have been working behind the scenes on it have done a bad job of making sure that the community is ready for it. If you're trying to build up a resume and your name is James Lamont and you're the commissioner of the North Dakota Department of Commerce and you're like, look what I did. Look what I brought to your town. And everybody's mad to the point where they've already got over 5,000 signatures saying, whoa, wait a second here. We didn't know anything about this. If people are that mad about it, maybe you should have held a town hall meeting here or there. I know that the soy crushing plant, and now we're talking about China in Grand Forks County. We're talking about Japan here in Cass County. Now, is that a bad thing? Well, I don't know. I don't know that it isn't a bad thing either. What I do know is this. I know that the people that are paying the price locally and right up front didn't know a damn thing about it. That's what I know. They didn't know a doggone thing about it. And so here we sit, right? It just plop. It's right in your backyard. Well, with Summit Carbon Solutions, they're because of the sheer distance they're going to have to go and across people's lands that they're going to have to go, they had to talk to people. I mean, they have to talk to people. It's just how much power do those individuals that they're going to talk to have? Have they been undercut by the state of North Dakota? Have they been, they're the cheerleader. How am I supposed to take on my own, my own state? You should not have to put money into a hat to get an attorney to look out for your best interest when, in fact, the people you're truly fighting is the state of North Dakota. because they get paid to look out for North Dakotans. They do. They get paid to go out there and explain what's happening and why they took one position over the other. And so you already pay a lawyer's salary in paying Drew Wrigley's salary. You pay that. For you farmers out there who are sitting there having your morning coffee at the Senex coffee shop, don't sit there and advocate on behalf of, hey, everybody throw $5,000 in. We'll get that back if we negotiate a better price on them crossing our land. Everybody, we need some help. We need some legal help. We need some, consulting help. We need all of this. Why? How did we get to there where you're spending money on something somebody else wants to do on your land? The state of North Dakota works for you. And for you representatives out there, you senators out there, shame on you. It's your job to look out for these people. In my 14 years in the legislature, and that's 14 years, so that's a considerable amount of time. If I had a bunch of farmers come up to me as a state senator and say, Joel, I don't like how I'm being treated here. Joel, I've got an issue with this. Joel, what can you do? I can guarantee you there would have been a red pickup headed to Bismarck the next day. There would have been phone calls made. There would have been meetings held. We would have sat there and had some public information meetings. I would have taken leaders from Bismarck down. And I'm not talking about the sales side of Summit Carbon Solutions. They're a business trying to do business. I'm talking about the side that looks out for farmers. It isn't Summit's job necessarily to look out for farmers, although they should. And that's a good business practice, but understand their interest. They want to take carbon, ship it in a pipeline through North Dakota, and inject it into North Dakota's soil. Now, that's what they're about. What North Dakota state government should be about is celebrating that only if the people of North Dakota are being treated the right way. And by that, I mean the potential of further damage, the science that goes behind it. I mean making sure that the people that are being used to get that carbon up to the old coal plants or around that area of North Dakota, I think that those individuals deserve an advocate. And for you legislators to not have stepped up and you legislators to not have done anything, turn your money back you get every month. Send it back to the state of North Dakota because you get a stipend every month for still doing work in the legislature. You don't deserve it if you're not working on behalf of these farmers. These farmers and ranchers need an advocate looking out for them. Now, someday, this probably will be built. What we're talking about here is making sure the land's put back the way it's supposed to be put, making sure they were compensated, make sure that the tiling, you know how many farmers have invested money in tiling? Making sure that the tiling is put back the way it should so it still works and we don't have to worry about that, 2-3 years down the road. Who's doing that on behalf of these farmers? Who's doing that? And you legislators should be doing it. The governor should be doing it. The attorney general should be making sure that they understand their legal options when it comes to all of this. Instead, what are we doing? We're sitting there going, this James Lamont, man, look at what he's got going. He's really doing a good job, man. This is a guy that, by the way, he didn't tell anybody because you can't tell anybody. These guys might not come here. Well, if you go up to Grand Forks and you look at the wet corn plant, I think you could make an argument they didn't want them to come there. And if they should have wanted them to come there, if it isn't a problem, then get out there and talk to the people ahead of time so you don't end up in this fight. It's pretty simple stuff, folks. It's pretty simple stuff. You don't come right next to the neighbor's house and build a 12-story apartment without him knowing that you're building a 12-story apartment right next to his home. Well, if we'd have told you, you would have tried to stop the permit. Maybe they would have embraced it. but they certainly deserved the conversation. And so James Lamont is not doing his job well. He's not doing it. I will not gauge his success on these projects. I will gauge his success on how North Dakota is being treated with these projects. That's how I will. He works for North Dakota, period. And let's not forget that. Let's get to the phone lines and let's get to Andrew. I'm going to take a call here. Abby's giving me the look like get to weather. Andrew, you're on News and Views. Go ahead.
Joel, didn't just yesterday you say that the people are smart enough to know what they're signing into?
They didn't sign. Andrew, that's my point. The people in the township north of Grand Forks did not sign. They didn't know about it.
On the wet mill plant, yeah, but I'm talking this pipeline because I'm dealing with some carbon on this pipeline. I can't figure out for the life of me why everybody is so against them. They are 10 times more professional than this dang next era that came through and did these wind towers.
Well, Andrew, I didn't say I was against them. What I'm saying is, as they go about collective bargaining when it comes to their land, why isn't somebody telling them exactly what the options they have?
Can I do the same thing the next time Southwest Water is coming through with an easement?
Sure.
That's happening too.
Absolutely you can.
Okay, so then Summit is offering $50,000 to cross a half mile of my land. Can I force Southwest Water to pay me $50,000 to cross a half mile of land?
No, but what you can do is you can talk.
Why not?
Well, Andrew, don't ask a question if you don't want to hear the
it's
answer to it. Don't ask a question if you don't want to hear my answer to it. Here's my answer to it. That township is giving an easement to Southwest Water. That's your township. That's called
an unorganized township.
Well, then there's your problem. Let's get to the weather cave and visit with Too Tall Tom Szymanski. Tom? Sarah Heinrich, and find out what's going on in our commodity prices. Sarah?
Greens are continuing that downward trend that we've been visiting about, seeing May corn now down 28 3/4 at 7.19, December at 6.50 down 14 1/4. May wheat falls 24.5 cents at 10.55, September at 10.35 down 23.5 cents. May soybeans 25 cents lower at 16.39. New crop November at 14.45, 23 cents lower. Seeing some upward movement in the cattle market. We have May feeder cattle $3.20 higher at 168.28. June live cattle up $1.23, and May lean hogs are down $2.75 at 116.55. With your markets, I'm Farm and Ranch Director Sarah Heinrich for the News and Views Radio Network from the Enterprise Sales Ag Studio. Enterprise Sales of Valley City, your grain handling and storage experts.
She's the best at what she does, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why here in her department, the ag department, it's going to get into a busy growing season, and they promise they'll get everything back to you that you'll need to know when you get out there, and you can find out more about what the growers out there are doing. After the top of the hour, we're going to get a chance to take some more calls on this. But, you know, I will say Larry's been waiting on hold for quite some time, so I want to get to him. Larry, you're on News and Views.
Hey, Joe. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Like, here's one thing I go back to all the time, and you say this a lot, is elections have consequences. And we always get the idiot Republicans to say it lightly. And you were on air last week with the landowners from the western part of the state. Well, according to what you're saying now, is the eastern farmers are now running into the same scenario with this pipeline thing. So why do they keep voting Republican when all they do is get screwed over?
Yeah.
And one thing when next time you have one of those Western landowners meetings or whatever, and you go there, I would just kind of like you to stand up in front of them for a minute and ask them who voted Republican.
Yeah.
And then look at them and say, go ahead.
I'm not going to promise I'm going to do that, Larry, but I get your point. My point is this, you know, with the Democrats and with farmers and ranchers, it's easy when you're the next generation or the generation after that to forget how things came your way. You know, we've had people, Trent Luce yesterday on this air went after federal crop insurance. He works with and he's helping Darrell Lies with the North Dakota Farm Bureau. And Darrell Lies and Nodak Mutual, the biggest beneficiary they have of what they do is federal crop insurance. So that's complete hypocrisy. Complete hypocrisy, right? We don't like federal crop insurance. Let's get Trent out there. Let's do all. Oh, by the way, we make our money off federal crop insurance. I mean, it's that completely ridiculous of an argument. Not to mention the fact that if you heard Trent Luce yesterday, he didn't know if he paid a $5,000 fine. He did. We'll talk about. I would remember a $5,000 fine. Welcome back to the News and Views Radio Network. I'm Joel Heitkamp, your host. Abby Miller, your producer, and in studio with us right now is my friend and host of Afternoons Live with Tyler Axness, the Tyler Axness. How you been, buddy?
Doing well. Thanks for asking me to come on down.
Did you like the the?
I could stick.
Okay, you know how
Get working
you
on
and I bust each other's chops a little bit, and for those folks out in Western North Dakota that might not get Tyler's show through the radio waves, I'm always, how'd you get them? You know, why'd you beat me on that interview? You know, it's good old competitive spirit.
It is.
Fair?
Yeah, and sometimes it's convenient that there is some news that happens after noon.
Well, in this particular case, I heard an interview that you had yesterday about two lifelong friends and what was happening in their backyard north of Grand Forks in regards to that wet corn mill plant. What describe to people what happened in that interview?
Well, and you can find that wherever you get your podcast. You can just look up Afternoons Live with Tyler Axness or the home-based news and views, KFGO.com. You can find it. Frank Matichek, Craig Spicer. You've got a situation up there, and I've been hearing off and on your conversation with the listeners throughout the morning. It's the exact same thing. They wake up one day, there's a little chatter from it, maybe a neighbor that had been approached, and all of a sudden you're reading about it in the paper up in Grand Forks about, hey, there's this China-owned company that's going to likely have this corn milling plant right here. And then they pull up the map and they're, okay, well, my business is here, all the infrastructure. So they start digging around trying to get answers. And up until just about 2 months ago, no one could provide any of those answers. And we're talking about a building that is going to have a lot of need for water infrastructure, going to need a lot of infrastructure for the transportation and the trucks. How are you going to pay for that? Who's shaking whose hands behind closed doors? And you have residents that have called this place home for decades, and they didn't know any of it was coming their way. And now, as you've been saying, you've got this administration and Burgum's office going around celebrating everywhere but where these things are happening. You know, they're going to the hotels in Fargo. They're going out to Mania and saying, look what we did for you, instead of listening to these residents and figuring out what are we doing to you and where you call home. And the lack of transparency, the lack of honesty is really getting under people's skins. And in Grand Forks, you've got a township, in this Falconer Township that's just north of the city limits. They're trying to figure out, look, the special tax, the assessments that we're going to get to pay for the roads, which we don't need, but this facility needs. You're going to tax us for this new group coming in. Never asked us about that. So they're organizing to see what they can do, because in the city of Grand Forks, they signed a petition, 5,000 people plus.
Over 5,000?
Over 5,000. They needed just a little over 3, the way I understand. Over 5,000 people said, let us vote on this. I tell you, Joel, if all those signatures are valid, I don't think this thing gets the approval of the Grand Forks citizens.
No. And I think the biggest problem they have, and what frustrates these guys, once I knew you got the guys, I rushed out to the lobby just to talk to them a little bit. Really good guys.
Yeah,
I mean, just
you could have a beer with these guys for sure.
These guys aren't Democrat, Republican. No. They're not the extreme here, extreme there. These are just guys that have something going up that they want a conversation about. And when you get 5,000 signatures that quick, that's a big red flag. And I have to say this, if they'd have talked to these guys in the beginning, if they had helped them be part of a, hey, I think you should have kind of thing. But when they throw at you, well, that isn't how the Chinese do business. Well, wait a second. Well, just back up from that a second. The Chinese are trying to do business here.
Right.
And this is how we do business. This is what, if you and I said, well, that isn't how we do business in China, do you know what the Chinese would say?
Right. Well, here's the door. Here's the latest plane ticket. You can get out of here.
Exactly. And so, what my sense, it isn't a sense. I can prove that it's right in a lot of this. The state of North Dakota's involvement in these projects without the ability to have a conversation with the locals it affects, that's wrong, Tyler.
Completely wrong. And that's one thing at the end of our conversation with Craig. He goes, look, this is just morally wrong the way the state's going about this. And I'm reminded, there's times where you have to give credit where it's due. And I did this, and I know you did this, when you have an incoming governor, Doug Burgum, getting his pickup because there was a community that was at each other's necks down at the Dakota Access Pipeline. He went down there, he listened, resolved it. I don't know what changed from that opportunity to this carbon capture pipeline, to Castleton, to Grand Forks, to where they're going everywhere but the community that needs to have them listen to them.
Right. I mean, if you're Governor Burgum, and I know his staff is listening right now, if not the governor himself, get in that Suburban drive to Grand Forks, go get in one of the ballrooms of the hotel, right? And say, put the chairs down. I'm going to be here. I want to tell people what North Dakota's role in all of this is. Now, that's the Slings and Arrows meeting, right? If you can take the Slings and Arrows, if you can sit there and explain what role your Department of Commerce played, James Lamont, to just simply sit there and say, well, we couldn't divulge this, or that isn't how they do business, that's bull. That's complete bull. And as a legislator yourself for a number of years, wouldn't you, as a legislator, advocate on behalf of these folks to get more information?
That's part of the job that you signed up for. That's why you went out there and asked for the vote, saying, let me work for you. And you know what? Enough of those people gave you their vote to do just this. And it seems, quite frankly, a lot of them are dropping the ball here. Another thing that I thought was very telling in our conversation was actually about lawmakers. That they seem to be caught off guard. Now, maybe that's appearances, maybe that's reality of it up in Grand Forks. That they found out about it in the Grand Forks Herald, just like Frank and the other boys up there. But even now, after that, they're not really taking positions. It's just let me know what you find out here. Yeah. Well, you could be the one leading the informational meeting, saying, "All right, we're getting together. I'll be your conduit to Bismarck because I'm your lawmaker." And guess what? I'm driving out there after the fact, and here's what we're going to talk about with James Lamont, with Doug Burgum, whoever needs to hear this. I mean, when you're talking about the water, you're talking about the natural gas pipeline they need from western North Dakota, which, quite frankly, I'm sure the community said, sure, we'll take that. But there are some resources and infrastructure needed here. And the question is, where was the handshake done? In what room? Right. What did you as a state promise this China group to get them to say, this is where we want to plant this?
And if for no other reason in your conversation yesterday, it jumped out at me. The thing I would be the most concerned about is the use of water and what's happening with water. How much are you taking? What does this limit when it comes to future use of water? What does this do when it comes to future development? Are we putting all our eggs into one wet corn plant? And here, if you look at legislators, when they get up in the morning and they shave, whether it's their legs or their face, they're sitting there saying, all right, we're sitting here and we're going to be governor someday. Or we're going to be senator someday. So they don't want to be perceived that they came out against a wet corn plant, right?
Right.
Nobody's against it by asking what the state is doing for it. I mean, let's not confuse those things.
Well, you can be for development and also expect some responsible way of going about it. I mean, I don't care if we're talking oil development, if we're talking about this corn milling, if we're talking about carbon solutions. You can have questions about that and not just be automatically assume that you're opposed to these things.
Right.
But the thing is, when you ask the questions of the people that are supposed to be working for you, they damn well better be providing those answers. That's not what's happening.
And you shouldn't have to throw a bunch of money in a hat to have legal representation looking out for you when you already pay the salary of the Attorney General of North Dakota. Period. Plain and simple. And James Lamont should be at the town hall in every one of these towns saying, let's hold a meeting. Let me explain North Dakota's role. Now, the governor did say on this very show that he would not take part in Summit Carbon getting eminent domain. Do you believe that?
That's a pretty big corner that he's put himself in, because if you're watching what's going on in Iowa right now and what some of the troubles they're having getting the easements on the land there, I don't know why that would be any different through South Dakota or right here through North Dakota either. And that is going to be that ace that they have in the back pocket here. Do I believe it? No. I think that the one thing with all these proposals we're talking about, the sense from people that are going to be impacted is that this has been so far moved along behind the scenes before we found out about it, that there's a sense they feel it's too late to change anything.
Yeah.
That it's already baked.
Well, and that their state is in with them.
Yeah.
So they don't have anybody other than hiring a private attorney.
Right.
And as a former legislator, the friend I was talking to, I looked at him and I said, and we come from different political sides of the aisle. There's the disclaimer. I said, what in the world is your legislator doing for you? What is Jason Heitkamp doing? Is he going about getting information, holding town hall meetings, answering questions, bringing government leaders to you? Is he doing his job? And he goes, no, that's why they're trying to get rid of him. Well, okay. Then I looked at him. Did you vote for him? Elections have consequences, man.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, great job yesterday.
Right. Thanks,
appreciate it. Let's get to the Weather Cave and visit with Too Tall Tom and get I want to thank those of you who watch the show on YouTube. You can always take advantage of that. You can watch the show live, and we're going to put a camera. Is there one on your face, Ab? Can they see you?
There is a camera, but it's not always on.
Take that on. Let's turn that on. You're the one who reminds me to turn it on every day. Then why don't you have to? Believe me, the viewership will go up if you're on versus me being on. You got a bunch of text messages to get to, but we take calls first here on the News and Views Radio Network. Let's get to Brad. Brad, you're on.
Yeah, calling from Grand Forks. Two things you mentioned today, EERC and the corn plant. I think ERC would have been moved a long time ago had it not been for Jerry Greenwald. When they defederalized it in 1983 and the state took it over, I think its days are numbered. I think that's still the goal, is to close the ERC or move it. It's still part of the state's plan. I believe that. The corn plant in Grand Forks, all of a sudden, boom, they got 5,000 signatures, like out of nowhere. I don't think the state really wants a corn plant in Grand Forks.
Well, can I ask you this, Brad? What did the people of Grand Forks know before they ever even found out in the paper or on the news or wherever? I mean, when you can get 5,000 signatures that fast, people are ticked off. Agree?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I question how many people are ticked off.
Well, we're going to find out. There's no question about that. Thanks for the call, Brad. Jerry Grunwald is a name from the past for me. Jerry is someone that I would rely on through the EERC many times. I know that I served with his wife in the Senate. Quite intense. Didn't always get along. She'd be the first to admit that as well. We were both from the same side of the aisle. But I will tell you this: Jerry Grunwald is he was very good at what he did. I believe that. He was such a resource, as was the ERC. And so, yes, when you start taking away its independence, when you start trying to use it as a tool because you built up a certain name and a reputation, that throws some red flags. I don't know how it's doing now. I just know who headed it up under appointment from the state, and you couldn't have had a worse director of the ERC after Jerry. I mean, you couldn't. Jovig was one of these individuals that did it for political purposes, and he gutted it that way. He took away the scientific power of the ERC, and it ended up showing up. Now, has it been fixed? I don't know, because I'm so far removed from working with them. But when I think his name was Bruce Jovig, when he took it over, it was like this: hey, we can help you. Wink, wink, nod, nod, rather than, no, this is what the science shows. This is what can happen, what can't. Get to a couple of these text messages. Joel, before we go. Joel, it's okay for the Diversion Authority to use eminent domain, though, on 4 generations of farmers south of Fargo. No. You want to talk about getting beat up in my time in talk radio? I operate out of Fargo, and I advocated on behalf of the people in southern Cass County. I'll go back to the legislative issue. Wes Belter. There's a name. He was paid to represent the people of southern Cass County. He hated having to stick up for them so bad, he had the district redrawn so those townships in that area would not be part of his district. That's how certain legislators are. They're chicken. They don't do the work. The woodshed here, Ab. Ready? It isn't like it doesn't happen every day. Somebody said, now listen to this with an objective ear, because you and I disagreed on some of this yesterday.
We did.
Yes.
On some of it, yep.
It says, yesterday, Joel, you asked for comments about the Will Smith, Chris Rock issue, but you didn't allow any time for responses. If Will Smith was white, he would have been canceled prior to the end of the show and stripped of all awards given to him by the Academy. Just my opinion, this individual says. Do you think that individual's right?
I don't think he would have been stripped of all of his awards, but I think it would have been handled differently, especially by the media.
Yeah.
It's similar, like you had mentioned yesterday. I don't remember if it was on air or off air, but you said it would be different if he would have slapped Amy Schumer in the face.
Yeah, he would have been arrested.
Yeah. Or at least taken out of the building.
The prosecutor that I spoke to yesterday just did, I talked to her because her point was that they'll have battered people come in to the police, or they'll have an individual that they've arrested that knew was battering someone. And they did that, they brought them in, and the victim would come in and say, I don't want to press charges,
Yep.
And the police would say, and the district attorney would say, tough, I don't care. This person's a menace. They're a threat to society. And, they committed battery. And so we're going to press charges. Now, whether or not, do you do this on every fight on a hockey game?
Yeah.
Do you do this on every fight in a football game? Where do you draw that line? Where do you stop?
The lines will get blurred, yep.
Exactly. And so if I was the district attorney of where this happened, I'm assuming the Oscars were in LA like they always are, right? Where
I think so, yeah.
There's no way I would press charges. There's no way I would, unless Chris Rock demanded charges to be pressed.
Or if he was injured, or if Will Smith had a history of it, maybe.
Yeah, that's a reasonable argument too.
But we know that Will Smith is a good guy.
See, there's your bias, right? There's your bias.
I know. And I also saw, which I was telling you about this morning, I saw a tweet that it was like, I know Will Smith is defending his wife because, she was getting made fun of for a disease she has.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people get made fun of that stuff every day, and you don't go slapping people.
Well, this individual, expresses the opinion of a whole lot of other people, which is Will Smith was defending his wife with a medical condition. I think he did the right thing. Can you imagine a scenario where Will Smith, and it was pretty clear he was going to win the Oscar, although you get surprised. I get it. Could you imagine a scenario in your mind where he gets up to accept his Oscar and he begins it with, first off, Chris Rock, you owe my wife an apology.
Yep. Or I think a texter said yesterday, if he would have got up and left.
Yeah.
And then when he won the award, he wasn't there.
Yep. They would have just said, we don't need to be part of this. Somebody said, we all witnessed an assault. He should have been arrested. And somebody said, and maybe it would have been different if Chris Rock had been white. All of these things play into it now.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of factors.
Well, and there's such a stereotype that it's black men that are violent, when in fact it's a proven fact that, white men have a real history of violence. And if you look at the percentages, it's not good there. But it plays in with race. It plays in with gender. It plays in with...
And just like the setting.
Well, in the culture of Hollywood, how they're untouchable, that type of thing. But here, to me, is the ultimate price that Will Smith is going to pay. Okay? And if I'm Chris Rock, I'm worried about the same thing as well, is when you look at them, is this what you're going to think of? Right? You said you won't. When you see a Will Smith movie or whatever, you won't think of that.
Yeah.
I will. I know I will. I know I will. I know I will. And I don't want to, because I think he's a good actor. I think he's good at what he does. I don't want to think of that. When I hear Chris Rock tell a joke, I don't want to think of that.
Yeah.
What he did last night changed his life forever. Or Sunday night. Yeah. All right. Paul Juergens in the newsroom, from the newsroom in here, our news director, Paul.
Don Haney of our news team is in South Fargo. I believe he's south of 32nd Avenue. There was some SWAT team activity a short time ago, and Don has learned from sources there at the scene that police have taken a man into custody, wanted in connection with a homicide. I believe it was last night. Yeah, last night around 9:30 in the suburb of Champlin. That's a Minneapolis suburb. And evidently there was some information that this suspect was in this area, and he has been taken into custody, we understand. And Don will report from the scene here shortly, but a murder suspect arrested in South Fargo a short time ago.
Good work, guys. Tracked it all the way down to here. So there we go. All right. Law enforcement doing their job. A couple more text messages. Kid Rock, or Chris Rock, I should say. First time today. Chris Rock was wrong, period. And somebody else says, how do you know he actually hit him? There was Fresh Prince. Get it? Fresh Prince.
This is a dividing topic.
This is really a dividing topic. It divided you and I.
Yep.
But we both flip-flop on it, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can easily be swayed.
I can easily be swayed about a man defending his wife. I can.
Especially for that reason.
Yeah. Now,
but again, I mean, I totally get it, too, that everyone is made fun of for crap every day, and you don't take it out with that.
If Will Smith made jokes about his wife and his wife's hair, just in kind of easing whatever tension before, does that make it okay for others to do it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't think so. Like, I think that my brothers could make fun of me about certain things, but if someone else does that doesn't really know me, I would get mad.
Let's say that a wife is making fun of her husband's weight, or vice versa. The husband's making fun of his wife's weight, and then somebody else makes a joke about his wife's weight. Does that make him a jerk?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
though?
Yep.
I mean, does it open it up? Does it, the truth is Will Smith laughed, then turned, looked at his wife, and his wife didn't think it was funny. Now he's in a, boy, my wife's mad at me kind of mode.
Do you think he was just laughing, though, because he knew cameras were on him and he should just go with it?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to get to Don Haney, though. Don from our news team. Don, what do you have for me?
It's an interesting development here this morning, Joel. Ironically, we had a story about a murder that happened in Champlin, Minnesota, one of the suburbs out there. Last night, they found a woman that had been stabbed to death out on the lawn. And we were getting calls all of a sudden this morning about SWAT and a lot of police out here in South Fargo. And it's over now, but they have arrested a man by the name of James Ninote. He's 44, and he is a suspect in the case in Champlin. Apparently, he was tipped. Police got some information on him. He was at an apartment building, 3100 block of 34th Avenue South. That's a couple of blocks just west of Essentia here, south of 32nd Avenue. He's taken into custody without incident. This all happened, the closure happened here within the last 25 minutes. SWAT had left and everything. No injuries here, but again, he was taken into custody. Apparently, from what very little information we've received from the police department right now, because it's an ongoing situation, police were notified of this about 4:15 this morning. So we don't know how long police were here, if they were attempting to talk the man out. They had their trucks here with that particular equipment where they can make contact and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of police cars down here. They were taking they were being very cautious here. If in fact this man is truly the suspect in that homicide that occurred in the Twin Cities suburbs here last night.
So what happens now, Don? Does he get transferred to the cities right away, or?
Well, that question was asked. We did talk to one of the people here that is commenting for the police department here, and she just said right now we're still working on it. My assumption is he'd have to be held here and then eventually, taken there through some action through the courts here. So, but again, the situation is there was no concerns here after the fact. People had been in danger or anything, but it's a fairly. There's a lot of apartments over here west of Essentia and south of Essentia, and hopefully we'll get some more information on it. But again, they were allowing some people that were in cars back into the building. I did see that, and then we had to move to another site here to try to get some information, and we did from one of the PIOs here with Fargo PD. Again, a suspect in a homicide in the Twin Cities, taken into custody here just a short while ago in South Fargo.
Thank you, Don. Great job.
You bet.
Don Haney, news reporter with our great news team. Let's head to the weather cave and get to another guy that's tops at his job, and that's Too Tall Tom Szymanski. because, quite frankly, it's great that the generation that she's from keeps saying, we got to talk about this or at least mention it. Go ahead and tell them, Ab.
It's Vietnam Veterans Day today.
That's right. Thank you to all those great Vietnam veterans. That was such a long period of time that we were at war in this nation, and they did everything that was asked of them and more. And for many of them, without the thanks that they deserve. And hopefully, well, I think America finally grew up and realized that they deserve to be thanked. Back home in my hometown, one of those was lost over the last week, and that individual was always there for veterans' funerals, for Memorial Day, for all of them. And, you know, back home, everybody's got a nickname. This was Caveman, and he just, you know, a great guy, absolutely great guy in a community that mourns, and there's more of that. And I know a number of veterans are going with us on the honor flight, Abby, and you're going to get to know these guys a little bit better, and you're going to love it.
Well, the Vietnam, there's not a lot of, or am I thinking of the Korean War?
Korean War.
Okay.
We're losing more and more.
Okay.
World War II, there's actually a couple guys going on this honor flight from
Really?
World War. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to have been so young in the war.
They were. In those days, I think my dad went when he was older than average. I think he went when he was like 22 or something like that.
That was older than average?
Well, it wasn't.
Holy
No,
moly.
I can do the math on this. Yeah. Yep. Dad was born in 24, and I think he went in, he would have been about 20. There was a lot of 18-year-old young men that went to war. A lot.
Was that because of drafting or?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Many people went in because they wanted to choose where they went in. If you got drafted,
no
same
choice.
thing. Well, right. It was, Dad never really liked to swim. And so he wasn't jumping up and down to be in the Navy, even though most guys in the Navy, you think of it, you're not swimming. Here's a trivia question for you. Which branch of the military, what? Why the look?
I don't think I'll know it, but okay, go.
Which branch of the military is the largest, has the most members in it?
Okay, so there would be, can we go over all of the branches?
Yep. We've
Navy and Air Force.
Navy, Air Force, Army, and the Marine Corps. We'll put all of that.
Okay.
We'll put those as the big four because with all due respect to the Coast Guard and, those would be the big four that would pop in people's minds.
Okay, I'm going to say Army.
It's Navy.
Really?
Yep, it's Navy. I'm fairly confident about that. I'm not going to get proven wrong. All right, big discussion yesterday about Trent Loos. There wasn't Trent came out against federal crop insurance to his credit. That means that he's consistent, or is he? That's the big question. Is he? I asked him yesterday as he was charged with a felony for moving cattle, or in his words, a cow. And he said over and over again he didn't sell it across state lines. Number one, a lot of ranchers called me after the show yesterday and said, why are you moving one cow to be on grass? That's kind of unheard of. But that being said, after he was charged, when he pled it down, I said, was there a fine? Because people that aren't Trent Loos's fans started texting into the studio, and they said there was a $5,000 fine here. And he said, in the beginning, he said no, he didn't pay a fine, and then he changed it, if I remember right. If I'm remembering right, Abby, he changed it to, I don't remember if I paid a $5,000 fine, right? Well, I'm just going to say if I paid a $5,000 fine, I'd remember it, right? Turns out he paid a $5,000 fine. So pretty short memory. I want to say as well, if you're looking for consistency when it comes to the PPP loans, which I get tired of saying they're loans when in fact they're grants. Trent, who hates the government, took $20,833. Now, if you want to read all my emails and text messages, there was just a lot of people calling BS. And of course, when you agitate out there and you get counties riled up to where sheriffs are deputizing and making it okay, like they did in Bowman County for ordinary citizens to carry that gun and now act as though they're a member of law enforcement, I think you're responsible for some of that. And that's why I challenged him. All right, good riding with you, folks. We'll see you back here doing the same thing tomorrow, taking your calls.